Hello everyone, today, or rather tonight, we're going to be learning about squared numbers. Now let's just think about a square for a second. So a square has two sides that are the same. Let's say this side has a length of 3, and this side has a length of 3 as well. So what would the area be of this square? Well, 3 times 3 is 9. So this would be a squared number because 3 times 3 is 9. Let's have a look at a couple of other squares. So if I have a square here, what's going to be the area of this square? Well, it's going to be 4 times 4 is 16. So 16 is a square. Let's go a little bit smaller. If we have 2 and 2, the area of this square is going to be 4. So 4, 9, and 16 are all square numbers. So not all numbers are squared numbers. Let's look at another number. If I have the number 5, what times table gives me 5? Well, the only times table I can think of is 1 times 5. And so if I was to draw this as a shape, as a rectangle, or as a square, well, we're not going to get a square because this is 1, and this here would be 5. So we can see that if we were to make this into a square or rectangle, we would get a rectangle. So 5 is not a squared number. Let's have a look at another number. 12? What numbers times together give me 12? Well, the one I can think of first is 3 times 4. And another one would be 6 times 2. If I was to draw these as a rectangle or a square, we would end up with 3 and 4. Well, that's clearly a rectangle. And if I was to draw 6 times 2 as a shape, we would have 2 and 6. Well, it's definitely not a square. So 12 is not a squared number because it doesn't have two numbers that times together that are the same. Let's have a look at another number. What about 36? The first times table that I think of is 6 times 6. And that's clearly a square because 6 and 6 gives us a square. In maths, we always have a way to go forward and a way to go back. Now I'm going to introduce what is called the square root. It's the root of our square. It's the numbers that make up the square. So you'll see a square root sign on your calculator, and it looks something like this. This is the square root. So if I was to draw a square, and I was to use the number 49, this would be a squared number because 7 times 7 gives me 49. So if I was to write this in my calculator, the square root, and then you put 49 in, it would give you 7. Let's write this over this side. Because my square of size 49 comes from the lengths 7 and 7. That's what square root means. It's the origin of my square. It's what makes up my square. So sometimes you're going to get numbers that may not be squares. So if I was to write the square root of 30, one of the basic times tables to make 30 would be 6 times 5, 5 times 6, which again is not a square, it's a rectangle. So this number would not be a squared number. And this would give you a decimal number. So if you chuck that into the calculator, you would see that the answer would end up being roughly around 5.5. A 30 is not a squared number, and we would just leave our answer as the square root of 30. Well, sometimes you're going to get questions that look something like this. Square root of 3 squared plus 4. So in this case here, what we do is we work out what's in the square root, kind of like brackets. Done my 2 backwards. Whoops. So 3 squared is 9 plus 4. So this here, 9 plus 4, is 13. So we have the square root of 13. Now, that's the simplest that we can leave it, because 13 is not a squared number, because the only times table that makes it is 1 times 13. And if we were to draw that as a shape, it would look something like this. 1 and 13. So when you're working out square roots, do what's in the square root first, then you can work out the square root.